Hello and welcome to our next LayerCraft tutorial. We will create a complex wall material. First, we will create a material instance. We will rename this. And when we open up and assign it to our mesh here, and in the details panel, so we will select our master material as the parent of the instance. By default it is using a material craft. We will enable LayerCraft for this tutorial. It will eliminate all the parameters, and in the layer parameters tab now we can select our background layer as search as master layer and it will come up. Now we have our default textures. First we need to change our textures. In the textures parameter group we have albedo, packed and normal textures, and in the layers parameter tab we have a texture sets option which will directly enable ORD example. So we have presets of the textures as by the texture packed methods. So we will assign each textures to the relative textures input. The UV is broken now. I need to actually rotate this, but we can use a UV rotation option feature now. We can just select our use UV rotation and set the rotation to 90 and we will be okay. Alright, our base material by the layer is correct now, and we can further adjust its brightness to make it a little bit darker. All the parameters of the material are enabled in the layers. That's the beauty of the layer system. Each layer has its own parameters by the same name, so you don't need to rename everything. But anyway, we can add now our mortar layer. We can select the master layer again, but we have our presets. You can create your custom layer instances to be used again and again. So with the LayerCraft project we have our some couple of layer instances that you can use, and as you can see I choose this layer. We can control its styling additionally, and by default without any mask method it will override everything, so we will create our blending logic. So this blend asset actually acts like the lerp's alpha input. So in the A and B slots you will be using the layer assets, and in the blend we will create our new mask now. So in the LayerCraft the base mask is the main masking method. You have basically the most useful ones are the procedural one. Let's talk about the blending operation now. When we choose a procedural as a gradient, we can use the mask method, mask debug method, to just show the colors of the black and white to present the blending mask, how it's going to be operating. So in the procedural mask we select the gradient, which is the UV space gradient, and we can use contrast and amount to control the mask in general. And when we disable the mask debug, you can see both these two materials are blending by this mask that we created, and in the gradient area, which is not 0, not 1, there will be two materials trying to be blending each other, like all the colors and the normals. So when we have enough contrast, like enough gradient area, First, let's talk about the texture mask method. Other than the procedural mask methods, you can just sample a texture as a mask, and you can select the channels to be working with. This one is looking nice. So we have a big patches of black and white and a lot of gradient gray areas that will be working on the gray areas. So the one value will be on the top layer and the zeros will be full bottom layer, and we need a custom pattern to be work in the gradient area. As you can see in the mask debug mode, you can see the mask, our general black and white mask. Now we can talk about detail mask. This is where the things are getting spicy. So by default, detail mask will be using attribute as the detail mask. What is this? This is actually just taking the gradient, the gray area of the blend mask, the base mask, and manipulate it so that we have a pattern of whatever we choose. In this case, we are using displacement from bottom layer. So the brick layers height displacement pattern will be our detail mask. So we need to adjust some parameters. By default, the contrast, which we need to invert it to see the top layer on the lower areas of the mask. I hope it's clear. As you can see, in the cracks in the lower parts of the brick layer displacement, we first started to see our top layer, and when we adjust the contrast of our base mask, which will give us a more area to work on this detail mask. Again, we can control the amount, the base mask, and detail mask will be just adapting to it. It's about the range that we are giving to the blend mask with the base mask, and we just adjust our detail. So there is an option to override below mask, which is working like the anchor points in the substance. So we will override and send this information, this blend information, to the system, so we can reuse it in later on, which we will do now. So let's create our plaster layer, and again we can select our layer instances from this custom. A lot of instance we have a old stucco. This is kind of old wall pattern. It's mostly white. We can adjust later on. Let's just rotate the UVs again, so the direction will be going down. You can lower the brightness again. These are the most default controls, the tiling and the brightness, but we can now furthermore control like albedo control, and with the tint colors you can just override any color you want. Let's go with the red. So we start with the master blender again. When we assign it, by default it is just the top layer. It won't do any masking. So you can see the top layer amount. When we lower this, it is like the lerp and just floats range of the mask. Now we use below mask for this operation, our base mask, this mask that creates the gradient, this general blending. And in the below mask we have the same pattern. As you can see, where the mortar, the white areas are strong, our mask starts to appealing there. Then as we can control additionally the layer of the top layers appearance, we can additionally just control how the mask will be affecting, but using the same input. So it is very efficient. We don't sample any new textures or something. We're just using our existing data, so it's like free masking method. So as the detail mask, now we will use a noise, not the attributes, we will use a noise texture. So as the noise texture, we can create we have a noise Voronoi pattern, and the alpha channel of the Voronoi pattern is this cracks you can see it's happening. And the base mask will be controlling again the area where the detail pattern will be appearing. So when we adjust the amount and the contrast, it will directly affect our Voronoi pattern where it's going to happen. We don't want just some solid areas of the red. We want a crispy looking things. And the beauty of this method is that the base mask of the mortar that is using is controlling both of the layers. So when we adjust the texture mask amount and contrast, we will directly manipulating both of the layers, which is really important and really give you the freedom, which is also really performance efficient. So in the top layer, we can adjust furthermore the detail masks like tiling. It's happening, it's really subtle in the blend area, so it's not like a really big patch of Voronoi, it's just on the edges of the mask. So we can try to control the contrast, the breakups, the amount of the textures. Well, it will be affecting only this gradient area, which we are describing with the base mask, and which is feeding from the below mask. I hope it makes sense. So these, I hope it's clear. So we can, when we adjust like the below mask contrast, it's using the same mask, but try to manipulate additionally. This breakup contrast is mostly working for the contrast of the pattern, and this is, we have the pattern, we have the detail, but we need more variation, which comes the overlay option now comes in. So we like to override the base color, and when we use as default, the mask is like the top layer, the top values are closer to 1 will be affecting by this overlay color, but we need to make it on the edges, on the corners. So when we invert the contrast, it will be on the lower parts and it will be affecting everything. So we use histogram selection, which is the same from Photoshop. It creates a range and zero out the both ends. So if you can see, we have a black area, a darkened area. We can further darkening the brightness so you can see more clearly. Yeah. So we have this pattern based on the noise texture, the below mask, and it is just happening in the, like you can see here is like the high value, and as we go down, the value will be like by the gradient. I hope it makes sense. You can just shift the histogram range. You can use contrast, the amount, whatever you like, and when you like lower the contrast, it can add like subtle details, but it can really affect and make it much interesting look. So again, anytime you can control all the mask details. The Voronoi patches, the tiling, everything is just adaptable and like sliders controlling everything. Like here in the Mortar, we can still adjust. We can use different channels, and every channel will be having a different range of contrasts, so it will have a different value of how this affect. You can see this happening on the edges. When there is no black, total black, there will be mortar effect everywhere, and it will be affecting by the displacement. But when we lower the contrast, we can totally see our background layer, like total black or total white, and the dancing in the between. This is all we are doing now. So additional controls of the layers, like color adjustments, we can create some unique, anything you like. This is a really fun way without affecting any layer above. And you know, this is the same name logic, same construct of the layer, so you don't need to like color of the red channel, green channel, or anything. It is just the same naming system. Like let's go as the same surface color of the brick, and there we have a different methods like this albedo mask, which will be using the albedo textures, different channels that will be using as a mask, and this mask can override some additional color information. Like when we lower the contrast, you can see the red channel, and when we increase the contrast, it will be more clear. Yeah, the lower contrast, the darkened parts are the most red parts of the texture. So we can, if we change the channel, you can see the different pattern. It can be working for every color, every albedo texture. It is like a free color variation. And we have an interesting thing to be working on now. So in the UV logic, we can use UV methods of the fake displacement. And we can use the parallax occlusion for only the brick layer. Let's see the difference. So we can use this method only for this layer without enabling the parallax occlusion. Without enabling the parallax occlusion for every layer, we can just use this parallax occlusion thing only for the brick layer with minimal cost. You know, not the whole material will be using the parallax occlusion mapping, just this layer. And we can additionally have some interesting look. And that's it for the UV methods. You can have any, like this is our standard now 3-layer setup. You can adjust anything you like the mortar of the color of the mortar. You can just directly go inside the layer and select the brightness and control it. Pretty simple. Or let's see, we have additional controls, or like we can actually now take a look on the procedural mask method and understand them betterly. Like the gradient mask, as you can see, this gradient mask is only one time universally, like all the material will be using this mask. Because we are overwriting the below mask with this gradient, whatever we choose as the base mask here will be the general masking method. So the contrast and amount will be affecting everything, and our on the top blend, our blend mask amount and contrast are also like additional contrast, additional controls to the top layer, which is give you like infinite controlling amount, anything you like, with the minimal effort, minimal setup. You can additionally use detail mask. This Voronoi pattern is this texture is almost black and white, so we don't have contrast of the black and white values that much. But yeah, like one gradient masking can be used with displacement patterns and also additional texture patterns, Voronoi in this case. This is like really simplify the general logic and give you much more interesting crispy looks beyond just basic gradient, because every mask is basically our base mask in this LayerCraft system, and everything will be using, in general we are using the basic gradient, but we need our detail mask to like create the variation. As you can see in the base mask, whatever we choose as the gradient, as the base mask, we can have all these methods, but they are requiring additional setup. You can check them out in the LayerCraft's demo level. They're all different methods. For now we can just use our texture mask is enough for this. And yeah, we have a really lovely pattern here. We have Voronoi, the mortar behind everything. And actually we can, let's see, we can control additional color information. Like the contrast will directly affecting everything, but we need some like desaturation. When we actually higher, the desaturation will be more saturate the color, so it will be more like warm, this dirty look we need to achieve. After all, we have all this damage on our wall. And yeah, so thank you so much for our video being here. Try to grasp what's the LayerCraft, how to set up the in general logic, all the controls. I try to explain overall everything, try to some of them here and there. Final adjustments, you can fine tune everything you like, whatever you wish to achieve. But I think this video is enough for now. Well, thank you so much, and you can check out the LayerCraft on the Fab and in the marketplace. So see you in the next tutorial.